presented with standardized tests, even though they had opted out of taking them. Should kids be required to take them? I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celestia Sherman. Also, President and CEO of the Houston Food Bank, Brian Greene, joins us to discuss the food banks possibly losing funding due to DOGE cuts.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, we'll hear the latest edition of Friends of Frank, where Hall of Fame Chairman for the MS-150, Bob Pohl, talks about this weekend's Texas MS-150 biking event to raise money for multiple sclerosis.
And as Ernie, Frank, and I discuss the top headlines of the day, we want your thoughts, questions, and concerns. Give us a call at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Markets remain in positive territory today as the administration signals a coming de-escalation in the U.S. trade war with China. President Trump moments ago at the White House.
We are going to have a fair deal with China. It's going to be fair.
Are you talking to them actively now?
Actively. Everything's active. Everybody wants to be a part of what we're doing.
Trump addressing reporters a short time ago. We have more from NPR's Scott Horsley.
President Trump's triple-digit tariffs on imports from China have brought a lot of trade between the world's two biggest economies to a standstill. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told a gathering of investors that situation is unsustainable and suggested a de-escalation may be in store. Stock in Tesla's up after CEO Elon Musk said he plans to spend more time running the electric car company and less time in Washington. The move comes after Tesla saw a sharp drop in sales and profits in the first few months of the year. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
Attorney General Pam Bondi has launched a task force to eradicate purported bias against Christians. Here's NPR's Ryan Lucas.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and FBI Director Kash Patel were among the Trump administration officials who joined Bondi for the first meeting. This comes in response to an executive order President Trump signed in February, directing the Attorney General to set up the task force to eliminate what the White House says is anti-Christian bias. Bondi noted that the Justice Department, for example, already has dropped 3 cases against anti-abortion activists and moved to limit such future prosecutions. Ryan Lucas, NPR News, Washington.
A historic procession in St. Peter's Basilica, which received Pope Francis's casket this morning. The pontiff, who died Easter Monday at the age of 88, now lies in state in the basilica. The public has been given 3 days to pay their final respects before his funeral on Saturday. Catholic cardinals from around the world have begun to gather in Rome, and they're holding conversations about who will be the next pontiff. More from Villa Marks.
Francis was the first pope from Latin America elected to the church's highest office, leading some to speculate that the cardinals could choose someone from Africa or Asia, regions where Catholicism is still gaining new devotees. A Filipino ally of Francis called Luis Antonio Tagle may be a frontrunner. He's led the Vatican's global charity arm and more recently its evangelization efforts, particularly in the developing world. The conservative-leaning Archbishop of Kinshasa, Fridolin Ambongo Bazungu, is a top African candidate with a massive flock in his native Democratic Republic of Congo. There are several Italian contenders too, including France's Chief Deputy Pietro Parolin, as well as other Europeans from France, Portugal and Hungary. For NPR News, I'm Willem Marks.
The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up 566 points. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. The state Senate has advanced a bill to study the costs to Texas of undocumented immigration. News 88.7's government reporter Andrew Schneider says Republicans blocked any consideration in the study of the benefits to the state from immigration.
Democratic Senator Roland Gutierrez pressed the bill's author, Republican Senator Mays Middleton, on the need for a balanced study that considers benefits undocumented immigrants contribute through labor and consumer spending.
And your report doesn't look to study any kind of benefit, does it?
Well, Senator, we're not in the habit in this chamber to spend taxpayer dollars to study the benefit of breaking our laws.
Middleton said the study was necessary to track the costs to the state of law enforcement, health care, and education. Gutierrez noted that the state's last study of the issue in 2006 found undocumented immigrants contributed a net benefit to the state's economy of more than $400 million. I'm Andrew Schneider, News 88.7.
Houston home sales continue to slip even as inventory is rising. News 88.7's Matt Harrop has an update.
New home sales in Houston declined last month compared to this time last year. Sales in the market slipped below 2,000 in the month of March. That's lower than both Dallas and San Antonio. Only Austin saw an increase in new home sales last month among major Texas cities. That's according to the Texas New Home Sales Report just released, which also says that the average home price in Houston declined by nearly $4,000 to $392,000. Dallas, Fort Worth, and Austin both continue to lead the state in new home prices.
And the Rockets are back on the floor tonight for Game 2 of their opening playoff series against the Golden State Warriors. Tip-off is at 8:30, and Houston is coming off of a loss in their first game, where they scored the least amount of points all season long. This is their last game at home before heading out west to face the Warriors. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include EBSCO, committed to providing colleges and universities with relevant online research databases to ensure student, faculty, and staff success. Learn more at ebsco.com. This is NPR.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
It is Hump Day.
Hey, it is Hump Day. It's a wet, messy Hump Day, by the way.
Does anyone know how it got the name Hump Day?
You get over the hump of the week?
And then the camel made it famous.
Right.
That's
I
right.
always think camel in it, but I think
Was it a commercial?
I don't know. Maybe.
The camel.
No, it was there before the commercial. It was there before the commercial.
Okay.
The commercial kind of popularized it, though.
You know the cool thing about
It was
commercials?
a Geico commercial.
A lot of commercials you can see, just like you can see us searching for a segue. If you're listening to us, you're only getting half the story, as they say. You can watch us on YouTube. You can find us either by going to hellohouston.org or logging into YouTube and looking for the Houston Public Media channel. Remember, when you do find us, don't forget to like and subscribe. Just click those buttons. You can also call us and share your opinions on any of the topics we're going to be talking about today, or to talk to any of the guests we have with us. Easy to do, 713-440-8870. And for those of you who don't want to talk to us, you can email us, talk@hellohouston.org. A lot of different ways to reach out and get involved in our show, and we're happy you're here. Even though, Frank, it's dreary out there.
It's dreary. It was a day not to come into work. But here we are. Yeah. I know. These showers and storms are pushing through, and they're not really too severe, but they're pretty good rainmakers, which can be an even bigger problem for people because you get out and you're driving in it, and then you get overconfident when it's only raining lightly,
Yeah.
And then you find yourself in the middle of a heavy shower. So be careful. It's going to last till late afternoon, and then it should push off and out of here. But it's going to last for much of the day. And then tomorrow, slight chance of rain. Friday, the same. The weekend dries out.
Oh, good. Everyone's always, we're at Hump Day, so we're all already
know.
practically in our minds on the weekend already.
Hey, speaking of weather, I got a nice note to share with you.
Oh, please.
Okay, this is from Mary. Frank, love Hello Houston. Could not have better hosts. Did not know Celeste before, but have always loved Ernie's interviews. And Frank, you were my weatherman. Glad you're back. She asked about Ed Hurst yesterday. She loved that interview. Thanks for the great content. Keep up the good work. So thank you, Mary.
Thank you. It's always great to hear from our listeners, especially when it's positive. But we're okay also when you have some negative things. That's how we learn.
That's right.
That's what we want to do. You know what you're going to learn about today on today's show? Houston Food Bank is going to be here. Brian Greene. He's going to be talking about the challenges they're facing in a world where budget cuts are becoming very real. They have some amazing statistics on the work they do, but how it's impacted by what's happening in Washington and locally. We'll be talking to him about all of that. That's coming up on this hour. But as always, we like to start the show with the headlines of the day. And Celeste, you've got some for us.
That's right. So students with the HISD school district are within their 3 weeks of the STAR exam. Students are tested across the state for this, and the STAR stands for State of Texas Assessment of Academic Readiness. Last week, students took, I believe, the English portion. Next is the math portion. And there are groups of parents across the state and right here in Houston that every year opt out their child from taking the exam. HISD Superintendent Mike Miles explained when he was on Hello Houston a few weeks ago how he is advocating for the standardized test to be broken up into 3 different parts versus one big exam taken at the end of the year. We want to hear from you. Do you believe in standardized tests? Do you think this is a good measurement for our students? And should kids be required to take them? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
I guess where I would start with this is to you, Celeste, as a parent. See, I got to say it this time instead of you saying it. How else do you gauge? Like, I'm not a huge fan of tests, and we'll get into that in a minute.
Right.
But you've got to have some way of gauging what students are learning, what they're retaining. And I'm curious what your thoughts are on if you don't have standardized testing, so you have a benchmark, how do you do that?
Right. I think, the standardized test, I think should be broken up in different quarters, not just one big 3 weeks where everybody's on edge, to do that. There does need to be a way to measure our students and where they are throughout the year. I think the criticism around standardized testing is that you are teaching to the test and you're taking away a holistic approach of students learning at their own pace and bringing in different strategies for students to learn versus, okay, we're going to test you on this. The counter of that is we've all grown up with standardized testing. We all, the SAT, we've all taken it. When I was growing up, I think it was also the STAR.
As we chat about this, we do want to hear your thoughts on this. It's a topic that touches a lot of lives. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. I would say probably the most stressful time in my education career, going to school. Yeah. I come from New York. We have Regents tests. So when you're in high school, you have to take these statewide tests you would have your end of year exam in your class, but you would also have to take the Regents test. And you couldn't get your Regents credits until you passed that test. You could get your high school credits, but not recognized by the state. And you needed so many Regents credits to actually graduate in the state of New York.
We had achievement tests growing up. But those
were they statewide?
Yes.
Okay.
And the achievement tests, the idea was that when you got to the SAT and the ACT tests for college, you would have been tested and you would be in a position to pass those tests to get into college. So right. You still have tests in high school and in junior high. You still have tests. Spelling test every Friday, math test after this section, a history test, a geography. So you still have tests.
Is it the standardization, that word, the standardized part of it, that across the state, every test is the same, if I'm understanding this correctly? And so that's where the problem is, that within the process of being in the classroom with the students, should teachers have the freedom to test in what they feel they're sharing with the students, see if they're retaining what's in this particular class as opposed to statewide? Is that part of it?
I think the other thing is, and I will look this up to make sure we clarify on this, but there might be an element of funding that is linked to state exams. Right. And so I think that some parents feel that model as well is the reason why a lot of schools and school districts push it, because I believe if you are at certain levels, like an A school, a B school, or C school, you might get funding based on that.
So even if you don't do well on the test, you still go to the next grade. It doesn't hold you back.
That's right. I believe
our finals in at least in junior high and high school.
Well, maybe
they
yours
held us
did.
back.
Well, these don't.
Not me, of course. But what are your thoughts on testing, standardized testing, and statewide tests? Where should we be on that? How do we gauge how our children are doing in school? Give us a call, 713-440-8870. I'm going to move on to our next topic, which is Texas Republicans are moving to further restrict transgender rights this latest legislative session with more than 120 anti-trans bills, the most in the country. Republicans say that the bills, and have a strong anti-trans stance, are about protecting youth, while political experts say the issues poll well and mobilize the GOP base. The latest, the Senate today will hear 3 anti-trans bills and a resolution for the state to officially recognize only 2 sexes. I could go into what each of the bills are. Maybe we'll come back to those. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on all of these bills on anti-trans legislation? 713-440-8870. It's almost, there's a number of bills almost seems like for every person that may identify as trans. I'm saying that in jest, but 120 bills seems like an awful lot for a very small segment of the population.
Seems like they're throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah.
One of them is Senate Bill 240, which is basically, for one thing, protects. It's meant to protect women. It's a bathroom bill, but I don't understand how that even comes close to working. What if you're a woman, Celeste, and what if a transgender person followed this law and had facial hair and was dressed like a man and came in and said, sorry, but I'm biologically a female, even though I'm transgender to a male, but I have to go to the bathroom in here.
I've experienced that. I've actually experienced that at the movies where I walked in and it looked just like a man. I mean,
sure.
And he was clearly, trans, and we were both looked at each other, and they
were presenting as a male,
very respectful. We looked at each other, okay, and I thought to myself, it was a little jarring. And to the other side of that is that there are a lot of trans people that present as women, and I believe that is not. I can't imagine them having to go into a male bathroom.
Right.
And I think that is also a safety issue for them.
So what the bill says is don't be trans if you want to go to the bathroom. Figure out that's kind of what it's saying.
Let me actually, Senate Bill 240 would require certain public spaces and facilities to be used based on biological sex, allowing for civil penalties and private lawsuits. The proposal, along with its companion bills in the House, mirror the failed 2017 quote-unquote bathroom bill, a push Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick supported back then, as he does now.
Well, and who's going to be in charge of making sure that the person either has a penis or a vagina? I mean, or a birth certificate with male or female? Who's going to be in charge of that?
I'm going to put it in perspective this way.
Okay, I can't wait to hear this.
So we all know Sonny and Cher and Chaz. They're born daughter, now son. We have seen him. He's been in TV.
Sure.
Facial hair. Looks exactly as any other presenting male you would see in public. According to this bill, he is walking into a female restaurant.
That's what we were just
but you have
about.
to put that visual there. If you have seen Chaz Bono, that's disruptive. There is an actress, Candy Kane, born biological male, now is female, presents as female, looks stunning. To your point, you're at an Astros game, and I hate to be this explicit, at one of those troughs, and in comes Candace Kane.
Right.
It's much more disruptive. If you go into a stall, no one knows what you're doing in your stall. Go in there, do your business, leave, no problem.
Most people are pretty polite. If there's going to be a problem, it's going to be a straight male dressed up as a woman to come into a female bathroom. That's a whole different issue.
That's not happening. That is against the law.
Right. And that's a whole
different issue. But they conflate those two issues. What do you think? Give us a call. We're very curious. 713-440-8870. You may disagree with what we're saying, and we welcome those opinions too. We want to understand these topics from both sides. So please give us a call. Speaking of give us a call, at 713-440-8870. We're going to step back to our standardized testing question, and Kyle is on the line with us from Clear Lake. Kyle, what's on your mind?
Hi there. Thanks for taking my call. What's on my mind is that I kind of had a question for parents who are exempting their children from these standardized tests, the STAR test. What are they hoping to accomplish by doing so? Are they trying to register a sort of a protest against the status quo and hoping that by exempting their kids from these exams, they're going to change something? I guess, and my other question is, what do they see as the harm to these children that these tests are doing? Yes, they may not be the best model for achievement or for learning or performance, but are they doing harm?
Kyle, great questions, great food for thought there. If you're listening right now and you have a reaction to what Kyle is saying, you may be one of those parents. Give us a call. We'd love to hear from you. 713-440-8870.
I can't see any harm unless some portion of it is more cultural. And if you were raised in a certain environment, then you're more likely to do well on a test than if you were in a different environment.
You, as a PTO president, what did you hear about this?
Well, I can tell you what did happen on Monday, April 21st. The Community Voices for Public Education actually had a boycott they were boycotting the STAR test, and in front of the Hattie Mae White Education Support Center, and they basically were saying some parents locally are upset that it's changed in regards to when they opted out, their child was still made to sit in their classroom and presented the exam. Now, they were not made to take the exam, but some parents are upset that their child was still presented.
Because they look sort of foolish sitting there and not taking it and opting out, which I didn't know you could legally opt out of taking these tests.
But we do know that there's a group here. Again, the Community Voices for Public Education did hold a protest on Monday about this.
I want to step back over to the trans bills and tell you about two other things and then take a call. SB 1257, this is the second of those bills, would require health benefit plans to cover possible reversal of gender transition treatments. And SB 619 would allow healthcare providers to refuse participation in services that conflict with their personal or religious beliefs.
But not emergency services, by the way.
Okay, that's a good point to add to that. Let's go to the phone and find out what Sarah from Houston has to say about these trans bills. Sarah, what's on your mind?
Yes. Well, I like to listen and hear both sides of a subject and try to maybe research and form my opinion over time, not necessarily at that moment. I think that's short-sighted. And what bothers me is that this station tends to have a very leaning towards the left, I would say, and everything is like anti-trans. The second you say it's anti-trans rather than just saying what the bill is, and having a logical discussion where you hear both sides, you're already being incredibly biased. I have a best friend who changed from a man to a woman transition, and I've had a lot of conversations, and my heart really, really hurts for him. On the other hand, I had a 6-year-old niece whose father did not feel he could go into the women's bathroom or bring her into the men's at a sporting event, and she saw a male penis in somebody who was, quote-unquote, transitioning, and she was only 6 years old, and that should never have happened. So I don't understand, first of all, why we don't just have separate bathrooms in the sense of like when you see the family bathroom for somebody who is in the process of transitioning. I don't think anyone who goes into a stall that looks like a man into a male bathroom or who looks like a woman, nobody would even know. So that is not the issue. And to say it is ridiculous.
You're right. I agree with you.
It's just a way of just trying to rile people up. If we can't have logical discussions, we have to protect biological women. And how we go about that, we might end up discriminating against other people, which is horrible. Nobody wants to discriminate against anybody, but you have to protect the children, and you have to protect the people that cannot or do not want to change their sex.
Sarah, I think we agree with the majority of what you had to say, and also I hope that this show is doing exactly what you want, which is opening up discussion on these issues so we can talk about them and look at them from different points of view. And we all have valid points on all sides of this issue, and that's what makes them issues. They're thorny. They're difficult sometimes to find our way through, but I think if we proceed with compassion and understanding is where we will find our answers. Yep. And I think you're illustrating that, Sarah. Thank you very much for calling.
Have another call. This is from Danny, also on the trans discussion from Northwest. Danny, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
So what's your thought?
I think I wish people would just quit oversimplifying trans issues. Most people trans population is so tiny, and it like was mentioned earlier by by one of the guests. It's probably as many bills as there are trans people. Like, we're talking about like 0.3% of the population. But I mean, they make it. It's always simplified as this person feels like a man or woman that day, and it could just be a feeling. But if you know trans people, and I know a few, typically, I mean, you're talking about people who are willing to either get rid of body parts and or grow body parts. That is far more involved than I just feel like a man or woman. Regardless of how you feel about the issue, I think I would much rather. Even they're having the debate on sports. We're talking about 100 people nationwide. I think was the number we're saying. This is not a real issue, other than it's a political issue, and it's actually. And if we look at people like intersex, it's the whole idea of two genders is actually is actually not true. So there's far more things that should be left to scientists and not politicians, because most politicians are not scientists. So I think that should be.
Danny, that's one of my favorite things you said, is a lot more things should be left to scientists than to politicians.
And I would love to get one of our biology professors from here at University of Houston on to discuss biology. And he's absolutely right. It's not just 1 or 0. It's a mix.
It's very complex.
It's very complex.
And we all know very masculine men, but we also know more feminine men. And we know more masculine women and more feminine women. And everybody's somewhere between 1 and 10 on just about everything. So it would be interesting to get a biology professor to explain more about this and how this all comes to be. And in the meantime, I hope these bills don't pass. But
well, Danny, thank you very much for calling in and sharing. Remember, we are interested in what you have to say. Give us a call at 713-440-8870. There's a lot in a lot of these topics, and there's a lot of opinions. That's my one problem with party systems, is we think there's either A or B. Right. You're either this or you're that. We are all made up of so many combinations.
Oh, yeah.
That's right. Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk with the Houston Food Bank's Brian Greene about possibly losing funding due to the DOGE cuts. And we're also taking your calls on any of today's topics at 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
Access to information is your right, not a privilege, and it isn't something you should take for granted. Reliable, vetted reporting matters, especially now.
Houston Public Media keeps you connected to what's happening in Greater Houston, the country, and around the world. But we rely on your support to make it possible.
This is your chance to stand up for the kind of journalism that protects your right to be informed.
Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Support comes from Miller Outdoor Theater, showcasing Smash Mouth in concert with songs like Walkin' on the Sun, All Star, and more this Friday. Open to the public. Info at milleroutdoortheater.org. Support comes from Health Link Advisors, helping hospitals safeguard patient care and operations against cyber attacks with documented continuity solutions. Details at healthlinkadvisors.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from the Holdsworth Center's Champions of Hope series, featuring 6 Texas education leaders who are uplifting their communities and leading with heart. More about their stories at holdsworthcenter.org.
Support comes from Gen Pro, a Houston-based home generator service providing power to homes during unexpected outages, helping with connectivity and productivity. More information is available at genpro.com. Support comes from Children's Museum of Houston, presenting Faithful Friends, an exhibit exploring understanding and friendship, where kids discover that while faiths and beliefs may differ, kindness and friendship are universal. More at cmhouston.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston.
Here we are again. We're moving on to now. We've all heard about these federal cuts that are happening. Federal funding cuts are affecting industries and organizations of all kinds. Public health departments, colleges and universities, even food banks. That includes the Houston Food Bank, which announced last week that it would cut back on how many people it serves because of federal funding cuts. According to Brian Greene, who is the president and CEO of the Houston Food Bank, the loss of funding will account for about 15% of the food bank's yearly budget. To dig deeper with it, we have Brian Greene with us right now at Hello Houston. Hello there, Brian.
Well, thank you very much for having me on.
Hey,
sobering
Brian,
numbers.
What is the budget? So I can get this 15% in my mind.
Yeah, so our budget this year is about $74 million, and so we're looking at about $11 million cut in funding that was coming from primarily U.S. Department of Agriculture, and then in addition to that, about a 20 million pound cut in commodities that they send us. So that works out to about 40 tractor trailer loads of food less per month. That we were getting from U.S. Department of Agriculture.
How do you even begin to make that up?
Well, we can't fully make it up. We will be trying to shift more heavy on produce, more heavy on the things that we can throw volunteers at, like bulk product, where we can get like big giant bags of beans where there's more broken, so they don't want to try and sell those.
Right.
But we can get the volunteers to package those. So we're going to try and shift to kind of our low cost volunteer opportunities that enable us to try and make up some of that difference, and then we're hoping that philanthropy will kind of kick in.
Yeah.
So the Houston Food Bank is considered the largest food bank in the United States, both in obviously size, but also distribution. Is it going to affect you all? We were asking how it will affect you all. But when you're looking at it, we say it's going to affect the food bank. How many Houstonians is it going to really be affecting? How many families do you think this is going to really hurt?
Yes, so Houston Food Bank works with a partnership network of about 1,600 different organizations in 18 counties. And collectively we serve, it's about 1 million people a year. These are households that are food insecure, which what that really means is they're not financially stable enough to consistently be able to afford food as well as rent and utilities and everything else. So it's about 1 million people that this can impact. What we'll be mostly doing, instead of serving fewer people, but cutting back on how much we do. It'll still be a lot. But it won't be as much.
Do you have, because we all think about the food bank, but and I'm making this up, do you supply Meals on Wheels? Do you supply, who all do you supply with food? What organizations? And you don't have to give me all 100 if you have 100, but that people would know.
Yeah, it would be a long segment.
Yeah,
there's about 1,600 organizations.
I know.
Just listening for us.
But what are some of the big ones?
Yeah, sure. So we work with many schools. We like after school programs, but also distributions like the backpack program for which is a weekend supply for the children that if the teacher believes that child's not eating consistently. So we have over 600 schools we work just with the backpack program.
So they could take
alone.
food home for the weekend? Is that the idea?
Correct.
Yeah.
But then also Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs for after school programs, but many churches and other religious organizations that operate pantries, shelters, soup kitchens.
Let me take this back just a little bit to the point that people will hear this and sometimes think, okay, so they didn't get something to eat today. They're a little hungry. Explain the impact of a child being hungry and how it affects schooling, development, community, just the whole concept of why food insecurity is so important to understand.
Yeah, so the first thing to understand about food insecurity is most of the people who are food insecure, these are working households. People generally assume unemployed, et cetera. That's not true. Is function of low wage employment, and unfortunately that's actually a phenomenon that has grown over the decades I've been doing this work. So these are families, overwhelmingly they're families with kids. So most of the people who are in a food insecure household are actually children. And so for the kids, the number one thing that's likely to happen isn't so much that the child doesn't eat at all, but that the family has to make nutritional compromises. The way our food supply in the United States has worked out, good nutrition is more expensive than poor nutrition. So you can keep the belly full, but you're not giving a good, and that's going to have long-term health consequences.
Can't do burgers every night.
Right. And then the consequences for schooling can also be significant, where the child is tired, less able to focus, and so that can impede educational progress. So lots of negative consequences, but it really is a function of these families just not having enough income to get by, and that's where ultimately we see the solution is, people just need to make more money.
Well, the children can't work. So, I mean, you could have a one-parent family with 5 kids, and the kids can't work because they're not old enough.
That's correct. And that is also why when you look at childhood hunger, it's actually most likely to occur in the summer months because the schools are actually the biggest child hunger fighters out there, bigger than the food bank by far. But that's not active in the summer for that purpose.
What about the argument? Well, there are programs, the STAR program, you can get the food, they don't call them food stamps anymore, but the food credit cards and SNAP.
And WIC.
Yeah, and WIC. What do you say to those folks?
Yeah, and those are also under fire right now.
Great.
So we don't know what's going to happen with SNAP, but there are significant cuts that are being proposed to SNAP as well. And so SNAP is really the first line, or actually the first line of defense is the income of the family, and that covers out most of the costs. SNAP then is number 2, and by the time you get to food banks, we're kind of like, kind of the worst of the worst cases, doing what we can, but we're nowhere near as large as what these federal cuts that we're looking at.
So we face these cuts, services are scaled back. What's out there to pick up the slack?
Yeah, what can we do?
Well, the answer to the question is there's nothing. So by the time you get to the charitable sector, we're trying to do the best we can with limited resources. To put this in perspective, SNAP, the dollar value of SNAP is 10 times the size of all the food banks put together. So in other words, about a 10% cut in SNAP is financially the equivalent of wiping out every food bank in the U.S. To think that we can make up the difference from a significant cut in SNAP is simply not true. It's not possible.
And one other place where people may often think it's like, well, maybe I'm not food insecure. This isn't a concern of mine. Also during disaster, when the city shut down, people have turned to food banks for help in those times too.
Yeah, it is. It's one of the nice things that we've been able to build up with that infrastructure because, we have 1,600 partners. We run 60 trucks a day. And so to repurpose those capabilities in a disaster has turned out to be very beneficial for Houston. And we're, proud that we can do that. And we hope to be able to kind of weather these current cuts in order
to people that are
to
listening,
not lose that capability.
For the people that are listening, think, well, this doesn't really affect me or my family. It very well could.
Well, also, the reality is I would assume that for most of the people who are listening to the show, it probably doesn't directly affect their family, but we are a community. And that is one of the nice things about Houston is it's very embracing of everyone. And
what can we do as Houstonians? Make a donation, bring food somewhere. What's your advice just to the everyday person?
Well, the 2 changes that we're trying to make. First off, we are hoping that we will get some gain in philanthropy. Help us, make this up. We can get the produce out of the farms, like in the valley, in the San Antonio area, but we pay the farmer to pick and bag the produce that otherwise they would just leave on the ground. So it does cost us in the transportation in, but we have great leverage on the dollar. I can do several dollars worth of food for $1 that way. So we need money to do that. But bigger than that, we actually need more volunteers. What has made Houston Food Bank the largest output food bank is we have more volunteers than anybody else. So we are able to say yes to more problem donations than any other food bank. We're going to have to emphasize that even more in order to try and get our output back up.
Not only are you large, if I'm reading it correctly, you're also Food Bank of the Year. You've been recognized for that too. So,
that was a bit ago.
Yeah, but still nice to know. I want to remind everyone we're talking with Brian Greene here from the Houston Food Bank, and we're taking your calls, comments, thoughts on this topic. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. You were talking about kids, and I just want to point out that before the pandemic, if my research is right, it was about 20% of children were food insecure, 1 in 5. After pandemic, it's 1 in 4. So the problem is increasing, but the services seem to be decreasing.
Yeah, it was a frustrating phenomenon to see that, and this goes back to the low wage employment. And during the pandemic, you may recall there was a big shortage of workers in hospitality, et cetera, after first laying everybody off, because it was the hourly workers who were the ones who suffered the most, and especially in the early stage of the pandemic, and then getting people to come back. And that actually, from our standpoint, turned into a good time because more people were able to earn enough money to not need us. And so we loved that. It's like, oh my gosh, so many businesses complaining about they're having to up the wages. Well, that phenomenon ended. And then when you had inflation kick in, and then certain benefit programs also stopped that were going during the pandemic. They had enhanced SNAP, they had the child tax credit. Those were great for reducing our line, and those are gone. And you've had now inflation eating up the gains that those workers had. We're actually back where we were, and actually some of the statistics are showing we're actually worse off.
Is there any help coming? We're talking a lot about federal budget cuts, but at the county and municipal level,
No.
how are things? No. Nothing.
I mean, you see those budget talks. I mean, they're all scrambling.
Now, Brian, can you tell us? We talked a little bit, obviously, about COVID and how it ended up impacting you guys in a semi, positive way. Has there ever been a time where y'all have faced something like this, where you're looking at, federal cuts, and that y'all have been okay?
Yeah, this level of
decrease in service,
Or
is this truly something new that y'all are looking at?
Yeah. So in some ways, it reminds me of a disaster scenario. Is you're getting lots of bad news and you're trying to adjust and you're trying to plan, but we've never had that happen and then had government resources say, okay, we're backing off.
Did that?
So the ability to ramp up has in part been because we get community support, we also get government support, and now actually what's causing this is the federal government saying, no, we're not going to do that.
Did you get any warning at all? I mean, did you just get an email? How did this happen?
Did you know it was coming?
Yeah, did you know it was coming?
Well, I mean, there was plenty of talk about what was going to happen.
Gonna make cuts,
it's going to make cuts, and so it's been a process. And even at the federal level, they're still trying to figure out all the implications and what will ultimately happen. So each one of the cuts that we've seen, there was a $7 million cut in this program where we're able to buy food from local farms and other agribusiness, local small-scale agribusiness. Everybody loved this program, but that's been completely eliminated. And then the TFAP, that was for us the biggest cut of all, where 20 million pounds. Okay, you're not going to get those tractor trailer loads anymore, and we're also not going to give you the money that we subsidize in order to pay the cost to distribute that.
Any chance with some of the tariffs and the farmers in America not being able to transport their goods overseas that some of that food would come your way?
Absolutely, there's an excellent chance of that happening.
That's good.
In the first Trump administration, we actually received a dramatic increase in USDA commodities because they were buying up the surplus farm product, and then they were giving it to us. That could happen if the trade wars kind of go along a similar path. Mm-hmm. And if you look at some of the other countries are saying they're doing, China, et cetera, where they're saying, nope, we're just not going to buy your agricultural products, I do see that as possible.
For folks who are seeing a reduction in service to themselves, their families, any suggestions, anything you can tell them to help them over this hump? And I'm hoping it's just a hump,
Yeah, hang in there. I don't have. Make sure that you are getting whatever benefits you can. So the United Way's 211 service. Make sure that you're telling them and see what they have, because I don't know each individual circumstances. Right. But yeah, these cuts are happening in so many different directions. It's a very significant number of nonprofits that provide social services that have a very similar story than what the food bank has.
Right.
So kind of like the safety net for which to try and help somebody who's struggling. That it's getting hit in so many different ways. I don't know where to send you.
Looking to the future, are there things that the Houston Food Bank can be doing to prepare for either increased budget cuts, or should some money come back if this were to happen again? Are there fail-safes?
Yeah, so, the reality of the nonprofit sector as a whole, certainly the social services, at any given time, we don't meet need. We do the best we can with what we have, and so we simply have to adjust down now, and it sucks. We wish that wasn't the case, and if things turn around, we will ramp back up. But
fingers crossed, right?
Yeah, that's in our case, just because kind of the magic of food banking, that we primarily deal with kind of like the food waste of America, where it's perfectly good, but they can't sell it.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other avenues for us to push harder on, especially the surplus produce, where there's lots of surplus produce. We've got to get the dollars to do it, but there's lots of it. So trying to grow that, we're almost 50% of our distribution is produce right now. But, if we got that up to 70%, we could really make up this difference if we could do it.
How can people reach out to you if they want to know more or help in any way?
Well, HoustonFoodBank.org is the website, and I'm Brian Greene. And if you call there, they always route me.
Thank you,
right.
Brian.
Brian Greene is the president and CEO of the Houston Food Bank. Coming up, Frank talks to Bob Pohl about participating in the MS 150 race that's happening this weekend as Hello Houston continues.
I'm Matt Hara, morning anchor here at Houston Public Media. The most challenging part of the job, I think, is, we're never spared a big story here, it seems, and that in itself makes the job, I think, equally challenging and satisfying. We have a hurricane season here that lasts almost a half a year. That in itself keeps you on your toes constantly. There are chemical plant explosions, unfortunately, here. That impacts people's lives. So I would just say the pure unpredictability of the job makes it challenging and satisfying.
When you hear a story on Houston Public Media, you know it's been carefully reviewed and put together by journalists who take the time to get it right.
Your support helps keep our reporting clear, balanced, and factual.
Because when you have all the facts, you can make better decisions for yourself, your family, and your future.
Protect the news that you rely on. Give now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support comes from LaPorte CPAs and Business Advisors, an independent accounting and business advisory firm serving clients for more than 75 years. With 190 employees across offices in Houston, New Orleans, and other locations. More information at laporte.com. Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525 or at johnmooreservices.com.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from St. Luke's Health and the St. Luke's Foundation, supporting clinical excellence, compassionate care, and a healthier future for all. More at supportstlukes.org.
Support comes from Houston Grand Opera, presenting Wagner's Tannhäuser in a production featuring tenor Russell Thomas on stage at Wortham Theater, April 25th through May 11th. Tickets are available at hgo.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston. Welcome back. Hello, Ernie. Hello, Celeste.
Hi, Frank. Hello, Frank.
It's a dreary day, but imagine trying to bike in all of this. So right now, it's time for the latest edition of our recurring series, Friends of Frank, where I chat with some of the many people I know about the things that they know or what they've been working on lately. So today, we'll be hearing my conversation with Bob Pohl. Bob is the Hall of Fame chairman for the MS 150. Of course, MS 150 is an effort to raise awareness for multiple sclerosis, as well as raise funds for the National MS Society. Over 5,000 cyclists ride more than 150 miles to get to College Station from Houston. Bob explains more about this year's MS 150 happening this weekend. So, without further ado, here's Friends of Frank. First of all, let's talk about the MS 150 this year, the weekend of April 26th.
Yeah, 26th, 27th, yeah. Saturday, Sunday event.
And I know you take it for granted because you've done it every year for, 23 years now?
23 years.
I mean, personally, you've raised almost $600,000 for MS, which is amazing. And it is a fundraiser, so we'll talk about that. But I want to talk about the fun of it because I was looking at all of the information on the website. First of all, is this a new sponsor that you have this year?
Yes, they came on board this year for 25, and they're super company, and they've been very supportive of the cause and MS.
What's the name of the company, ACC?
Yeah, it's American communications construction. And I've heard nothing but great things about it.
Nice. That's good. It's important to have a title sponsor.
Yeah.
I can tell you. Absolutely. So it looks like there are several places you can start your ride from, even
Yes.
Austin, if you live in Austin.
Yes.
Everybody, but I was amazed that you can like put a tent and they'll set up your tent for you and get you ready to go. And even if you want to shorten your ride a little bit, you can put your bike on the truck and meet it up later in Burton, Texas. So tell me about the ride itself. It seems like a lot of fun.
Well, when I first started doing it, I would do the whole 180 miles.
Well, you're in great shape. I can see that it served you well, Bob.
Thank you. It was very challenging because the first day is 100 miles. The second day is like 80 miles.
How long does 100 miles take?
Well, 7 hours, 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
You're in the saddle because you got to stop. You can't ride continuously. People do, but I'm not one of those.
Right.
Like you stop at rest stops, you refill your water bottles, you go to the bathroom, you get something to eat.
And they have a lot of those, don't they? They have a rest stop like every 12 miles or something.
Yeah, 8 to 12, depending on the route, you know?
Yeah.
And as I got older and started having knee issues and some of the stuff, I started shortening the route, taking advantage of what you just said about the different route options.
Right.
Started going from Waller, which was 60-something miles versus 100 miles. And you still get the same effect. You still finish in LaGrange. You still have the big finish there. You still have the big celebration of day one. You see all your friends and what have you.
Well, and this is thousands of people participate.
Yeah, the one year that I did it, there was like 10,000 riders.
Oh, wow. Well, how does LaGrange accommodate all these people?
You know, I will tell you, they do the fairgrounds at Fayette County Fairgrounds, and they have a Czech museum there, which is fabulous. I mean, that's worth a visit in itself. But the fairgrounds are very well laid out, and the MS Society does an exceptional job of setting up tents and entertainment and food. And so it's like a carnival type atmosphere when you get there. They call your name out. You're going through a chute. There's people ringing bells, like this, and it's fabulous. I mean, it's an experience that you want to have.
Yes.
So it validates why you're doing what you're doing. And then what's really heartwarming is then a lot of the people with MS will be along the finish line, and they'll be in wheelchairs, and they'll have signs and placards and bullhorns and what have you, and they're cheering you on.
Yeah, and I saw that there are people who have different kerchiefs that
Yes.
they'll wave, whether they're living with MS or they know someone that is.
Exactly.
So it really brings the whole thing home, I think, for people. So you go from here to LaGrange, spend the night. I guess you don't party too much because you got to get up the next morning and ride again.
In my youth, I did, but as I got older, I said, it'd probably be a good idea to be in bed by 9.
Okay, so what's the goal to get to College Station? Is everybody trying to get there by 3 or something? How does that work?
Well, for me personally, I've always tried to finish, whether it be in Austin or College Station, around noon to 1 o'clock. So I would try to accommodate, because I would have people waiting for me, like my wife and my sister, my brother, and some other family members would come, and they'd be at the finish line. And so out of respect for them, I didn't want them to be delayed any more than it is. What's really interesting is that you see people coming well after you're done. And it's heartwarming and sad at the same time, because you see people that are truly struggling to get up, but they're so dedicated to the cause, they won't quit. And they just keep riding and riding. And so here you are leaving, and you're showered and fed and, had a couple beverages, and you see people on their bikes coming in, and you just go, oh my gosh, how's that person still on the ride? So I forget the time that they sweep the route, but say sundown, let's say 5, 6 o'clock, they'll start rounding them up. There is one guy, I forgot his name. He's affectionately known as the Turtle.
Okay.
And he's a ride marshal. He has all red on. He wears red leggings, red everything. He's all red. And his job is to ride, to be be with the last riders on the route.
Like the last bidder at an auction.
Yeah, and it's a cool tradition, because here's a guy that he's a volunteer just like everybody else. He gets something out of it, but he helps. He encourages people to get through the deal. So I would say most of the people are off the route by 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
So the route is wonderful. The cause is heartbreaking. I mean, multiple sclerosis, affects 1 million people in the United States alone. It has different levels of the disease. From what I read about it, it's kind of like if you look at an electrical wire and it's coated. You have an electrical wire with a red or a black or a white coating. What happens to your nerves? They have a coating, and MS strips those nerves of that coating. And so it's a nerve disease that can manifest itself in so many different ways, from something you can live with to something that can debilitate you and something that can kill you. I mean, it's a tough disease. So let's talk about multiple sclerosis a little bit. I know this touched your family very personally.
Very much so. My mother had multiple sclerosis, and she had the progressive aggressive form.
She had the bad stuff.
Yeah. And so when she was finally diagnosed in 1976, prior to that, they didn't even know what MS was. They didn't know what multiple sclerosis was. And so we had to deal with all the misdiagnoses and stuff with what it was. But hers started out simply as a drop foot. So she would be walking along and her foot would just kind of roll over and not function properly. So it progressed quickly from there. So from the time I can remember my mother driving and going to sporting events with us and taking us to baseball and scouts and all those things, to by the time I was a freshman in high school, she was bedridden.
And so she was probably 30 years old when this started.
Oh, yeah. I mean, she was a young person.
Yeah, it really does affect 20 to 40-year-olds. We're right there in the prime of their life. I read your story, and she ended up bedridden.
Yes. So she was bedridden, and so there was 4 kids. I was the oldest of the 4 siblings. And we all just divvied up. My dad had a job in the finance business. He kept long hours. He would come home for dinner. We'd have dinner, and then he'd go back up to the office and do some more work. But he was an excellent caregiver for my mother. But he taught us how to care for my mother, and he taught us how to do it. And my mother, what was interesting about her is that she was like a general in a nice way of running the household. So she would sit there and tell us, okay, go do this, go do this, go do this in the nicest way. And we would of course want to do things for her, but everything got done. All the wash got done, the house got cleaned, the food got cooked, the yard got taken care of, and we all just took care of it. I mean, we didn't know any better. It was just the way we were. But my mother never gave up her spirit of a cure or help for the disease, because she just always had this spirit that it was like, I wish I had it.
I'm so sorry that happened to your mom. I'm so sorry. And you're a great son and a great advocate to keep going. There is some hope. That I was reading that there's actually finally talking about maybe a cure for MS.
Absolutely. It's fun. Part of being a top fundraisers, I get invited to a lot of these events where they have speakers that talk about the research and the doctors and stuff. And they are, for the first time, talking about a cure. And they're talking about the medicines that are coming out to help these people live with MS. There's over 20. Somebody told me there was 27. I don't know if that's an accurate number, but say 20 to 20, upper 20. And there are people now living with it. And what's really nice is up until recently, there wasn't really a drug for people who had the progressive form of MS like my mother had. They're finally making leaps and bounds on treating those folks as well. So they're making the money that I raise and other people raise is truly making a difference.
Yep. That's so nice to hear. I go to a lot of these galas too, like we were at for Camp for All. And it's nice when the disease really looks like it can be conquered. So
yes,
it's very encouraging. Well, Bob, good luck on the race. I know that you'll do well. What's your ultimate goal in your lifetime? Raise $1 million for MS?
That would be lovely.
Yeah, that would be lovely. Look, good luck to all the riders. Thank you for participating. Thank you. Thanks for being a friend of Frank.
Oh, thank you for allowing me to share my story with you and talk to you. Thank you so much.
All right, that was Bob Pohl. He's the Hall of Fame chairman for the MS 150. That takes place this weekend, April 26th and 27th. So thanks so much to all of you for listening to the latest edition of Friends of Frank.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll learn more about a local organization finding solutions for people with criminal records looking for a job. And we'll talk with a cast member from Forbidden Broadway, Merrily We Stole a Song, playing at the Hobby Center starting tomorrow. This is News 88.7.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Did you know Houston Public Media accepts vehicle donations? If you've got a car or truck that you don't need anymore, donate it to our station. It could be worth hundreds of dollars or more in support. Go online to houstonpublicmedia.org/cars for more info. Support comes from Rice University's Kinder Institute for Urban Research Annual Luncheon, May 19th, celebrating its 15th anniversary and sharing findings from the 44th Kinder Houston Area Survey. Tickets at kinder.rice.edu.
Still have a chance of thunder showers, currently at 74. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, according to the American Lung Association's annual air quality assessment released yesterday, the Houston-Pasadena metropolitan area ranks 7th worst in the nation for ozone pollution and 8th worst for particle pollution. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also talk with co-founder of Mission Launch about the Bank on 100 Million Houston Hackathon event today. That helps people with arrest or criminal conviction records find jobs, careers, and other economic opportunities.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, we'll hear from Forbidden Broadway cast member Jenny Lee Stern, who will be taking the stage here at the Hobby Center this weekend.
Also, we want to know your thoughts, so give us a call at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Trump administration is shutting down data collection for a landmark federally funded study about women's health. Here's NPR's Rob Stein.
The Health and Human Services Department is cutting off funding for all the centers that have been collecting data about tens of thousands of women who've been participating in the Women's Health Initiative for decades. The project has produced a series of landmark discoveries about women's health, including the risks and benefits of hormone replacement therapy for menopausal women. Scientists say the decision cuts off crucial research at a time when the nation needs to study older women and chronic disease more than ever. Rob Stein, NPR News.
Elon Musk, the architect of the federal government shrinking entity known as DOGE, told investors in his Tesla company last night that he plans to spend less time helping President Trump next month. NPR's Camila Dominowski with more.
He said that he would be stepping back somewhat from DOGE, but he did not frame that as a response to the criticism of his work there. He said that it was simply that the bulk of the work setting up the entity was done already. Musk also said he still expects to spend 1 to 2 days a week on government work, saying that it's important to fight waste and fraud in government.
NPR's Camila Dominowski. For 3 days, the public will be able to pay their final respects to Pope Francis. He died Easter Monday at the age of 88. NPR's Ruth Sherlock says the pontiff's body lies in state at St. Peter's Basilica.
Francis is lying in a single wooden casket rather than the 3 nested coffins that's been traditional of previous Pope burials. And the coffin at St. Peter's Basilica is facing the church pews at ground level, not raised up. And this is typical of his papacy, of trying to keep a little of the ordinary even in this very extraordinary job.
NPR's Ruth Sherlock. The day before his death, Pope Francis granted an audience with visiting Vice President J.D. Vance, who converted to Catholicism in 2019. The meeting lasted only a few minutes. Vance is echoing what Secretary of State Marco Rubio has said about Russia and Ukraine negotiations. If the two countries cannot reach an agreement, it might be time for the U.S. to walk away. NPR's Deepa Shivaram has more.
Vance is traveling in India with his family. He told reporters it's time for Russia and Ukraine to say yes to the proposal to end the war.
We're going to see if the Europeans, the Russians, and the Ukrainians are ultimately able to get this thing over the finish line.
Vance said parties have been negotiating in good faith, but now it's time to take the final step toward a diplomatic agreement and long-term peace. He says both Russia and Ukraine will have to give up some of their current territory in the process. Deepa Shivaram, NPR News.
The Dow is up more than 600 points, or roughly 1.5%. It's NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. Houston Public Works expects to raise water bills over the next few years to fund the replacement of a critical water plant. The project is expected to cost up to $4.2 billion. News 88.7's Dominic Anthony Walsh says the rate amounts are still being studied.
The East Water Purification Plant supplies 1.9 million Houstonians. The Public Works Department expects the facilities to last only another 5 to 10 years. It's proposing a complete replacement. Chief Financial Officer Samir Solanki says it will be funded by a mixture of local bonds, state-subsidized loans, and federal loans.
Funding can be tricky for something as significant as the East Water Purification Plant, especially when you're talking about billions of dollars.
Paying down that debt will cost a few $100 million per year, which Solanki says will require rate hikes in about 2 years. I'm Dominic Anthony Walsh, News 88.7.
The Texas Senate is considering a bill that will prevent people without legal status from receiving financial aid for higher education at universities and colleges statewide. FIEL Houston's Cesar Espinoza testified against the bill in Austin last night.
I was one of those students. Growing up, I had to work 4 jobs and then go to school full time just to make ends meet. We're not asking for a handout. We are just asking for the same opportunity that every other taxpayer like us in the state of Texas gets.
People without legal status, including DACA recipients, are currently able to receive state grants for higher education through the Texas DREAM Act passed in 2001. And the Astros beat the Blue Jays 5-1 yesterday. It's their second win in a row, and Houston goes for the sweep tonight around 6:40. It's currently 74 degrees. You can expect some showers and thunderstorms this afternoon. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Subaru. In partnership with the Arbor Day Foundation, Subaru is distributing over 100,000 trees this year to grow greener, healthier communities for generations to come. Subaru, more than a car company.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Welcome back to Hello Houston.
Welcome back. Welcome to the noon hour of Hello Houston. Remember, as you listen to this show, we're also streaming on YouTube. You can follow along, youtube.com at houstonpublicmedia.org. I just
Make sure you like
terribly.
and subscribe to that also.
Yes, that part too, but let me go back and give the actual
okay,
address.
Try it again.
YouTube. go to YouTube and then look for the Houston Public Media channel. Or go to hellohouston.org, and there's an orange bar, and you can click there. It's like and subscribe while you're there, as Frank just said. But also, there's been a lot of activity over on the YouTube. It's another whole version of our shows going on over there where people are engaging and talking and writing and sharing things.
We
with
love
us.
our YouTube community, and some of those comments have been coming through, and we encourage you to continue sending them. Let's see right here.
You're going to find some for us and read them to us. While you're doing that, I want to also remind you our phones are always open. Give us a call, 713-440-8870, and also talk at hellohouston.org to email us any of your comments.
Yep. Jenny Deal, bathrooms should all be combined with totally enclosed stalls, and then you have sinks for everybody. Enclosed means no way to see in. Problem solved.
Problem, though, if you are just joining us, you have no idea why Celeste is telling you about bathrooms. So in our first hour, we were talking about the trans bills that are making their way through the state legislature, and we've had a lot of reaction to that.
Well, and also on that, Elizabeth from Cyprus on trans said, I work for Starbucks. All our bathrooms are gender neutral, and there's no problem. You don't necessarily need male or female bathrooms. And you don't, but when this goes into the high schools and the schools, it's going to be hard for schools to retrofit single bathrooms.
That's right. And speaking of schools, we also were talking about standardized tests earlier, and we did receive quite a few comments about that topic. Cosme Garcia says the kids are anxious about taking these tests. So yeah, they can be harmful to mental health. My kid is having panic attacks over testing. I'm going to read this one.
Oh, what?
An off-air phone comment. Shane, I'm super happy Ernie is back on the air. The other two are great, too.
The other two.
We're
the other two.
It's like Tony Orlando
the
and
best
Dawn.
two. The best two.
It's like Diana Ross and my Supremes. Anyway, Celeste, Frank, and I appreciate all your comments that are coming in. Keep doing it, because you don't want to go outside right now because it's kind of dreary.
It's shifting. The heavier rain is shifting to the east side. It is still dreary, right?
Yeah.
Right there in the mid-70s. So that's kind of comfortable. But all the heavy rain is basically I-45 and east of there. So if you're in eastern Harris County, Galveston County, Brazoria County, but the rest of us are beginning to dry out a little bit, and that'll continue throughout the day. I don't see any more coming.
We'll continue to monitor your comments and responses. We'll continue to answer your calls as you call us at 713-440-8870. We got a lot in this hour. We are going to be talking with the co-founder of Mission Launch, who is here to talk about Bank on $100 Million Houston Hackathon event that's going on. Also, Forbidden Broadway's in town. One of the stars is going to be joining us a little later to talk to us about this very iconic parody show of Great Broadway. But, as always, we start the hour with headlines. Celeste, you lead us off.
The American Lung Association does an annual air quality assessment, and it was released yesterday. Of the top 10 cities with the worst air quality, the Houston, Pasadena metropolitan area ranks 7th worst in the nation and 8th worst for particle pollution. We want to hear from you. Give us a call. What can Houston do to clean the air? And do you feel like the city officials are doing enough? Give us a call, 713-440-8870. A couple of other items on the report. Houston is the 7th worst out of 228 metro areas for high ozone days.
We used to be first.
Oh, we were number one.
We used to go back and forth with L.A., first and second.
Oh, with
yeah, but we were. I remember one year we were worse than L.A., and that was a huge Houston Chronicle headline, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something about ozone. Ozone is 3 oxygen molecules. Oxygen we breathe is 2. So it's really not the ozone, but what happens is sunlight and emissions, automobile emissions and other emissions, chemical emissions, can break down the oxygen, because what happens is you get all these sulfur dioxides and nitrous dioxides, and they can break down, by the sunlight breaks them down so that you've got an NO instead of NO2. And so an oxygen molecule will go over there to join it. And then now you got one little oxygen molecule, and they don't like to be alone. So they go find a 2. So now you've got 3. So now you've got ozone. But it's not really the ozone that's the problem. It's the emissions. But the ozone is the best and easiest way to determine if there's a lot of those emissions. because
Right.
they break down and they create the ozone. Just to make
Well,
that clear. But we have been in worse shape. I mean, cars are better than they've been.
Right.
And what's coming out of those smokestacks out there in Pasadena is cleaner than it has been. And there's a lot of electric cars out there.
Well, it says not all the ozone pollution is from human-made pollution.
Right,
That's
right.
what the report was also saying. Extreme heat and severe weather could also partly be to blame.
Well,
That's
lightning,
something that we
maybe
do.
lightning, can produce a little nitrogen or something. I don't know about severe
Are
weather.
you extreming? We have severe heat
And
in this area?
I hate to break it to you guys, but Brazoria, Galveston, Harris, and Montgomery counties all received Fs in this report. Don't at me. This was
Don't at you. What do you think about our air quality? Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
I'm more affected by the allergies and the pollen. That
Well,
kills
I wonder,
me.
though, if part of that, though, does play into pollutants in the air,
So, well,
too.
particulates are dust and pollen.
Right.
So when and the particulate, I think they were 8th worst for particulate matter, and that is dust and pollen. Absolutely.
You did also mention car emissions, which leads me to my story. Here you go.
Here we go.
As Tesla sales and profits plunge, CEO Elon Musk says he'll spend less time working for the federal government, but he has no plans to stop his work with DOGE entirely. He said, quote, "If the ship of America goes down, we all go down with it."
What a charming guy.
I know. He said that on a call, but I mean, I understand where he's coming from with that. I can see the side of it saying, I don't want to see destruction to what's going on, because if this goes down, we all go down. He also, his industry, if it
really was,
you
he the
guys
one
are
with the
looking at-
chainsaw? Was he the one with the chainsaw?
You guys are looking at me
saying,
like-
I'm slashing American jobs.
Well, it's
I don't feel
it's
sorry for him at
ironic
all.
that he's saying if the ship goes down,
We
it's
all
like,
go
well, you
Sounds
kind
more like a
of-
threat to me.
Yeah, and I
Like-
think this is damage control.
Yeah, I
It's-
think he's
it-
saying, don't be happy about Tesla going down because I'm going to take you with me.
Well, as the apologist, Ernie, I will continue to read my story, and then
Okay,
you
go
guys
ahead.
can have at it. He said on a call with investors, they made that quote on Tuesday night. Now, depending on the amount of time that he spent focusing on slashing the size of federal government, it's an interesting quote for him to make. Tesla's quarterly earnings report came out, released about an hour before he had this phone call. It showed that the company's net income plunged by 71% year over year. And that revenue from selling cars dropped by 20%. A lot of drop there. I feel sorry for investors in that, because there is a company that exists outside of Elon Musk. Can Tesla recover? Houston Tesla owners, are you in fear for your car's safety, or have you considered getting rid of it because of these protests and anger that's out there? Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Somebody was talking to me yesterday about this whole incident. And they were saying, that Tesla is getting the brunt of this. But the fact is, other people invented Tesla, invented the car. Elon came in and bought his way in, became the figurehead of it. And so there have been, I have seen on television, so it must be true, some board members calling for Elon to resign from the board because they want to preserve Tesla and all the good that Tesla had done independent of Elon and his financial commitment.
Most of the friends I have that have Teslas, they really like them. And I've driven them just to see what they were all about. And they let me take one to Galveston and back. I got a little of that anxiety, that fear.
When did you do this, though?
Oh, this was 5 years ago.
Okay, so you didn't get the people honking at you and
No,
giving you
this was
signs
not.
and stuff.
This was not. This was not recent. But there's that anxiety of running out of electricity when you're in an electric car, and you want to make sure that you don't. But they pretty much solved that problem. But I had a little of that.
This bothers me because
What part of
Elon
it?
Musk is a billionaire. And
Richest man on the planet.
Yeah, he won't go down.
Not just
he won't
a
go
billionaire.
Down. America
Yeah, go
will
on.
go down, and he'll just go and live somewhere else.
So it's like, quiet, I'm not done.
And now, he is seeing 71%, of his revenue or whatever exactly it was going down. And all of a sudden he's coming in damage control and saying, well, I'm going to. What about all of the small businesses in America right now? What about people that are losing their jobs?
Oh, yeah.
What about all of the people that are feeling the real pinch in their every single day lives?
And many thanks to him.
And the ship is going down. Well, sir, you were partly one of the captains of that ship. And now you're going to sit here and look at American people and say, oh, well, I'm going to go down with you.
And to put some perspective on
I
it.
have zero remorse,
You don't care, do you?
for
Look,
him.
a year ago, Tesla stock was $144 a share, and today it's $257. So it's not like it is. It's dropped from what it was. It was way up there in the 400 range before the inauguration. I'll say that. So it has dropped, but you know what? It's still a lot better than it was a year ago.
Yeah.
And it is unfortunate because Tesla is a good product. It is, it is cool. I've sat in a Cybertruck last weekend, and it's one of those things. Yes,
they are so ugly, but
but
they're very popular. There are 3 in my neighborhood.
They're very popular, and it's unfortunate, but it's one of those things where, again, you put yourself out there. You're going to.
I do want to point one other thing going on what you were saying, Celeste. I was talking with someone who was very close with an extremely successful, well-known performer. And the rumors, the stories out was that this performer was now broke. They were bankrupt. And this person said to me, you have to keep in mind, when someone that rich is broke, it's not the same as if you and I are broke.
Right. They're still Hollywood rich, right?
Yeah, they still have.
Hollywood rich. They're worth $10 million, just not 100.
Elon could lose everything and be broke and be richer than all of us combined.
But I think to your religious background, Celeste, you reap what you sow.
That is right. Amen, Frank. And I also think that
we got an amen in here today.
A lot of times these, men, it's their reputation and ego that is more at stake than their actual
You think?
money.
You
Their
think,
bank account.
you think reputation is rampant in the Republican Party right now?
So what do you folks think about Tesla, Elon, our comments? Give us a call. I think we're strong enough to hear them today. 713-440-8870. Frank, what do you got?
This is interesting. As Texas continues to enforce one of the nation's most restrictive abortion bans, guess what? New Jersey is launching a campaign aimed squarely at reproductive health providers in the Lone Star State, urging them to consider relocating to where their work remains lawfully protected. I know. So without getting too deep in the weeds here, the campaign debuted last week. Billboard ads in Houston and Dallas near major university hospitals and medical schools. We have a few of those, trying to reach medical students and residents and practitioners that are affected by this Texas post-Roe climate. So New Jersey officials pushed similar initiatives in southern states in 2022 when Texas' near total abortion ban went into full effect after the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade in June of that same year. So obviously the initiative comes because the concern is with Texas doctors who say the state's abortion laws are putting patients' lives at risk. Under current law, nearly all abortions are banned, with no exceptions for rape or incest. The only permitted exception is to save the life of the pregnant person, and it's been widely criticized by physicians for its lack of clarity. So I guess we go back to, is the state of New Jersey right or wrong for doing this? But, it's your life and your career. So I wouldn't blame a single person if they relocated.
You know what? I'm just making a note here to myself on today's show. Not that we push buttons, but we have covered state education, transgender, abortion, and government funding. Boy, we're hitting them all.
And throw Elon Musk in there.
He's there with the government.
Reap what you sow.
We're really going there.
This abortion services move to a state where it's legal. In one way, it's kind of fascinating because as the Texas Medical Center being here, the head medical center in probably the country, our location in our med center, to be saying to those folks, if they're limiting what you can do in your state, come to ours. It's kind of a brilliant move for New Jersey. And what's going to happen is New Jersey's going to have the top doctors that are doing this in the country, and it's going to help them economically. So smart.
Well, and if anybody can relocate, it's medical profession. I mean, at a certain point, they don't want to do that. But young people that are just beginning their medical profession, I think they almost expect to go and relocate unless they have big family ties to a certain community. Once a Texan, always a Texan for some. But if you've spent gosh knows how long on your education and as much money as it costs to become a doctor or a nurse practitioner or a nurse, it's a lot of money and a lot of time just to be told we might arrest you for something or you might have to watch someone die because our laws are so vague. What choice do you leave them?
That's right. And we want to know what choice are doctors being left right here in Houston in the state of Texas. Give us a call, 713-440-8870.
Yeah, state of New Jersey. You right or wrong?
We have a comment on the Tesla situation. Steve from Cyprus. Hello, Steve.
Hi, guys. I drive around the city all day. It's my job. And last week I saw a bumper sticker that said, it was on the back of a Tesla, that said, anti-Elon Tesla driver.
Please don't hurt my car kind of thing.
That's right. I was a left-winger who bought a woke vehicle, and now I'm afraid all the other left-wingers are going to sabotage the damn thing. That's what the Democratic Party has come to.
Yeah.
It's rough out there. Steve, thank you for that. I did see it was going around on social media, somebody driving one of those Tesla trucks, and they had removed the back panel and replaced it with one that said Toyota, which I thought was hysterical.
Oh, wow.
So,
well, Steve, be careful driving in today's weather for sure.
Thank you, Steve, for calling and sharing that with us. Speaking of today's weather, it's also National Picnic Day. Bad day for a
Wrong
picnic.
day for that.
Bad day for that. National Lost Dog Awareness Day.
Oh, please chip your pet if you can afford to do that.
That's
right. A lot of times you can get a break on that.
Yeah.
No,
Well, you
the
have to.
Harris
It's the law.
County Bark will
Yeah.
actually, I believe, they hold free chipping days
It's so
over the
important.
weekend. We can
and
look
if
that
nothing
up.
else, have a tag on your dog, but a
That's
chip's
right.
better.
And the last thing I want to mention, because if you're listening right now from work or watching us on YouTube, it is National Administrative Professionals Day. So celebrate your administrative professionals. They carry a lot of the bulk and a lot of the work for us.
And also, if you're a fan, a Rockets fan, the Houston Rockets take on the Golden State Warriors in Game 2 of their playoff series tonight. The Warriors lead the series 1-0.
Last thing.
Remember New Coke?
I was going to say last thing, New Coke. It's the anniversary of New Coke, and I think tomorrow is the anniversary of it going away, something like that.
Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola. There you go.
Well,
Okay,
growing
Celeste.
up, they called them Coca-Colas. All my aunts and uncles. Do you want a Coca-Cola?
Really? I called it soda.
Oh, Lord.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we talk with the co-founder of Mission Launch, Teresa Hodge, about the Bank on 100 Million Houston Hackathon event today. The event helps people with arrest or criminal convictions, records, find jobs, careers, and other economic opportunities. And we're also taking your calls, 713-440-8870. This is Hello Houston on News 88.7.
It's more important than ever to stay informed. That's why Houston Public Media delivers well-researched news that's free for everyone.
And right now, your support helps make sure it stays that way. No subscription, no paywall, just news that's here when you need it.
Give today to keep yourself and your community informed, no matter what the future holds.
Make your donation now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Or call 888-909-0887.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on TV 8.6. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World helps us understand the movements, conflicts, and cultures that connect us all. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hi, I'm Craig Cohen, the host of Houston Matters. Join me weekday mornings at 9 or at your leisure on your podcast feed for your daily guide to the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. From politics to the economy, energy to the environment, healthcare to education to transportation and beyond. If it matters to Houston, it matters to us. Check us out wherever you get your podcasts or live on the air weekdays at 9 a.m. right here on News 88.7.
Support comes from Downtown Houston Plus, with new businesses like Tenfold Coffee Company, Meow Wolf, Barbacana, Punchline Comedy Club, and Bubble Boba. Details at downtownhouston.org. Support comes from Houston Grand Opera, presenting Wagner's Tannhäuser in a production featuring tenor Russell Thomas, on stage at Wortham Theater, April 25th through May 11th. Tickets are available at hgo.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To share your thoughts on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
As we've been saying, there's a lot of activity going on over at our YouTube channel, so head on over there, watch the show live. You'll be able to see all of us and our guests. Just look for the Houston Public Media channel, and while you're there, click subscribe and like.
Yeah, we
like the likes. Give us some likes there. Celeste, what do you have for us now?
Well, we've all been there, right? That point in your life where you're looking for a job, whether it's right out of college or you're making that career jump. And it usually comes with a certain amount of disappointment and also excitement. But what if you have a criminal record? While employers today have indicated they are more willing to hire workers with criminal records, job seekers still face significant barriers to getting work. Mission Launch is a national nonprofit that focuses on helping people with arrest or criminal conviction records find jobs, careers, and other economic opportunities. Today and tomorrow, Mission Launch is teaming up with Prison Entrepreneurship Program and TXRX Labs to host the Bank on 100 Million Houston Hackathon event. And we welcome Teresa Hodge, the co-founder of Mission Launch, as well as Josh Pritchett, the president of Job One Stop. Teresa and Josh, welcome to Hello Houston. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having us. We're really excited to be here.
That is a mouthful.
Yeah.
Bank on 100 Million Houston Hackathon event. What exactly is it?
Well, first of all, 100 million. By the year 2030, 100 million Americans will have an arrest or conviction record.
Wow.
And so what we're saying is it's time to bank on those 100 million people. And so this is the first time that we have brought this event to Houston. We're really super excited about it. A hackathon is, you got to break that big word up into two. We bring in solutions that are designed to help people with arrest or conviction records. We are here focused on jobs, pathways to jobs, for the 30,000 people who are released from prisons and jails in Texas alone.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask this so that we understand. The event that's happening is a place where you are spearheading concepts and ideas on how to address this problem, or is there practicality for people who have this situation looking for work?
Both.
So it's a job fair.
It's almost a job fair.
Almost a job fair.
We're bringing some employers in, but employers who are interested in this population. We also bring justice-impacted people into the room so that they can share their lived experience. They're the subject matter experts, and so they get to talk about it. And hopefully, we are bringing these two markets together.
So when you say justice impacted, earlier we were talking a little bit when we were meeting you all. Both you and Josh have been justice impacted. Can you talk to us more about your own story?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go, Josh. And so I served a 70-month federal prison sentence. I went to prison late in life at the age of 44, 3 days before I turned 45. Happy birthday to me. I got there.
Oh, my gosh.
That's a rough way to go.
Yeah, there you go. Came home when I was closer to 50. And so I took 20 years of really good experience. The company that I co-founded was investigated. I went to trial to defend myself and the company. I lost, and I ended up having to go to prison. And so while I was there, I learned a lot about our prison system, an out-of-sight, out-of-mind institution, and came home and just wanted to really create the solutions that I personally would have needed, but more importantly, the solutions that I knew that the women who I had met also needed.
And Josh, you are with Job One Stop. Why don't you tell us a little about your story and then also what Job One Stop is doing?
Sure. So Teresa and I are basically on two ends of the spectrum. So I came in as a young man, and all throughout my teenage years was in and out of juvenile detention centers, ended up with a 3-year sentence and in Virginia. And I got released when I was about 21 years old. And I did what everybody does. I got to get a job. Right. So I started applying, and mind you, I went in as a younger man, so I wasn't super skilled, didn't have like a resume or anything. And every place I applied for said no. And I'm not saying like banks or higher, skilled place. I mean, the fast food restaurants, the grocery stores, gas stations, everything minimum wage, they all said no. And so it wasn't until I got one interview, because I really only got one interview out of all the applications. Ended up at a hardware store, and I worked there for 5 years because I really didn't know what else to do. I didn't have a college education, et cetera. So fast forward, I did do that. I Googled, how do I make more money? Because the hardware store is not
That's
really,
what we all want to do.
Yeah, I want to provide for myself and have a good life. That led me to University of Virginia, getting a finance degree. I ended up, having some experience in New York City with that, and then going to corporate America, and then actually building a real career years later. I mean, we're talking 9 years later after that. And so then I wanted to pivot into this work and do something to help, like Teresa said, people like myself who didn't have these opportunities or even know that these paths existed. And that's how I met Teresa.
It's been a while since I have been in the job market. I'm going to be celebrating 30 years here
Or
next
jail.
year.
It's been a while for that, too.
Yeah, been a while. But as I remember, there was always the question, have you been convicted of a crime? I may have said federal crime. I can't remember.
Yeah. Felony.
Felony. Is that still allowed to be asked on a job application? And if in fact you do answer that as a yes, that's I'm assuming in most cases automatically you're tossed out of the pile. So how do people move forward? And especially when we're talking about the sheer number of people who have been impacted this way. Where are we at in that? Is there legislation to stop that question? It seems extremely limited.
Why do you think we should stop that question?
Because it doesn't give you any of the nuance of the situation.
And
sure.
What do you think?
He's 100% right. Yeah. The legislation is usually called ban the box. And it has been banned across the country, but in a very inefficient way. So who knows what it is in Houston? It may be something different in Dallas, maybe something different in Austin. So all across the country, employers have to figure out what is the right way to do it. What we have found is that most employers, they take the question off of the initial application. And then if they're interested after they've hired you, after they've interviewed you, had a chance to meet you, right before they extend an offer, they ask the question. And then they can run a background check. They can have an opportunity to have a conversation and then determine if the criminal activity or the criminal history is a threat to them today. You know, are you a changed person? Are you, deserving of that second chance? Are you ready for that second chance?
Does it come with a liability? Let's say as an employer you say, okay, I'm going to give this guy a chance. He seems like a good guy. Whatever he did, it's been forgiven. He served his time, all of that. And then there's an incident at work. Am I responsible, or does the law say, no, Frank's not responsible. The guy he hired is still responsible?
Yeah, we've seen is there's not actual kind of substance behind hiring negligence. This concern, obviously it's a concern, but what it ends up being is more of a kind of smoke and mirrors around a reason why to not hire someone.
Stigma.
Yeah. And a lot of this is fear-based. And that's one of the biggest concerns is that, a lot of it is, I think, logical fear. Hey, somebody has a criminal record. Why would I hire them versus somebody else?
And depending on the record, and I think it depends on a lot of things.
Yeah.
So
it's the nuance that you were talking about.
Yeah.
So what are some of the challenges that people with criminal records or were formerly incarcerated, job seeking, what are they coming across that when they're looking for a job that we may never even think about?
Yeah, it's actually the mere fact that they have a record that keeps them from being able to persist.
Because they hit a wall like Josh did time after time after time.
Absolutely.
And also even just an arrest record. So I want to clarify that. Arrest does not mean conviction. So if you just have that, it can still have the same.
But the arrest record stays with you?
It could. So,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, so most employers run a criminal background check.
Sure.
9 out of 10 employers run a criminal background check. But then once they get it, they don't know how to read it. They don't know how to interpret. Is this serious or not serious? So that's why it's important. We want every employer, if you need to run a criminal background check, we believe, yes, run a criminal background check, but you still have to talk to the person. Yeah. You need some nuance.
Do you teach that at your seminar here, like how to read that? Is that one of the things you teach employers how to do?
We went a step further. One of our we have a for-profit company, R3. It actually provides criminal background reports, but with the nuance. We don't hide the fact that a person has a record, but we give SCORE, which gives context. Is this person risky today, or are they ready?
Yeah.
We're talking a lot about the one aspect of this. I'm curious about flipping that script and what employers miss when they disqualify someone because they have these records. Where are the benefits of someone who may have gone through this process?
Yeah. So what I will tell you is that most employers who hire people with records, a lot of times they don't want to advertise it, but what they will tell you privately is they're some of their best employees.
Our best people.
They're resilient. They stay on the job because, quite frankly, they don't want to go looking for another job.
Good point.
Yeah.
And it's harder.
And they don't want to go back to jail. Yeah. So, I mean, they're not going to steal from you, hopefully, and they're going to be very crime-free after they've been out.
So, Josh, talk to us a little bit about Job One Stop and what you all are trying to do.
So one of our partners is Eventive, which provides tablets inside of the prisons. And so this is something a lot of people may not realize is there's kind of an iPad, that an incarcerated person can use, and there's a small amount of applications on those.
So your folks are in jail.
Correct.
And Teresa's folks are out of jail.
In transitioning, because obviously at some point. So what we're trying to do at Job One Stop is prepare you with career skills, education, know what these paths are, how to prepare a resume, how to talk about your record, how to navigate the job hunt, and actually find something successful. So on the tablets, you can go and you can see the job board, you can see what's available, and what we're about to actually roll out is a lot of modules on career training, introduction into, hey, if I want to pursue a specific career path, what kind of education might I need, and what paths even exist. There was a recently conversation around these middle skill employment jobs, so jobs that a lot of people don't know exist, don't require college degrees, but require some kind of tech literacy. And so those are jobs you can sometimes make six figures making with these jobs. And so that's what we're trying to expose people to and educate them.
And can you get some of these skills in prison, I guess?
A lot of it is, how do I create the roadmap first? Because if I don't know it exists, I'll never apply myself towards it. And when you look at the population who is incarcerated, typically it's poverty, low education, that kind of background. And that's a background I'm familiar with. So I didn't have family members or people I knew who were doctors or lawyers or things. Right. And so if you don't see those things, they're not really that accessible to you.
Right.
And so what we want to start doing is showing people those things and then create the accessibility pathway to get them.
To help put it all into, or were you going to?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, to put everything into perspective for folks to understand. Teresa, I'm curious about post-incarceration unemployment rate in our area. How does that look, those kind of figures?
Yeah, so all across the country, individuals who are incarcerated are usually about 20-30% are unemployed at a higher rate than everyone else. And so reentry is actually what we're talking about, and career exposure is really important. But what I can tell you is that employers are missing out on really good talent, skilled talent. Again, I took good skill sets to prison. People who are in prison, they're learning skill sets that are transferable. When we look at energy, for example, 22 million jobs are expected to be open and unfilled. And what we know is that there are millions of Americans with arrest or conviction records that could fill those jobs.
So this event you're having, is it tomorrow? Tell us more about it. It's tomorrow and where?
And how can people get involved?
Yeah, so we start today at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
At 4 o'clock, we start with level setting and just kind of TED-style talks so that everybody can understand what the problems are. And we start talking about the solutions that we want to create while we're here. We then go into a social hour from like 6 to 8, so it starts at 4, 6 to 8. It's a free event.
Where?
It's at the East End Makers Lab. Yeah, and so we're really excited about that. It's a free event thanks to the generous sponsorship of Eventive, our partner here in Texas. And tomorrow we start at 9 a.m. and we go to 4. And we are looking for creating pathways to employment for Houston residents in energy, advanced manufacturing, and in utilities.
Josh, quick question for you as we get toward the end. I'm curious about recidivism rates and the difference we see for folks who can come out of these situations and get employed to those who can't.
Yeah, so recidivism obviously is a topic everybody wants to talk about. It's very difficult to track and manage equally across a lot of states, but you can obviously kind of use some basic logic and say, hey, if somebody has a job, they have an income. If they have an income, they have money, they don't want to lose that, so why commit a crime? Opposite, somebody doesn't have a job, they don't have income, crimes of desperation, period.
Right.
It's a very simple, very basic. So when you actually look at public safety, you say, hey, we want to reduce crime, people don't tend to think we need to increase job opportunities. But that's actually the most fortuitous path to reduce crime is actually give people opportunity, give them something that they don't want to lose. Most human beings are very similar. They want to take care of their family. They want to have something, to eat. They want to have a place to live. That doesn't change. And a lot of times, people who have committed crimes, their reason, again, was just because there was a lack of that. And we look at the population, poverty, low education. It's a very, very basic equation when you look at it that way.
So the rehabilitation can actually come once somebody gets out of prison or jail and gets a job and a life.
Yeah. I mean, that was my story.
Yeah.
Right. So there wasn't a lot of education on, hey, Josh, here's how to do things differently. It was, hey, I just had to build a life kind of by myself. And I think a lot of people are struggling to do that. But that's the path that a lot of us have to take.
Wow. Josh Pritchett is the president of Job One Stop, and Teresa Hodge is the co-founder of Mission Launch, which is currently hosting the Bank on 100 Million Houston Hackathon event that's going on right now. Teresa and Josh, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you for having us.
It's great. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll talk to a cast member of Forbidden Broadway, Merrily, We Stole a Song, as Hello Houston continues.
It can be hard to stay informed about what's happening in our city, our state, and across the country. That's why Houston Public Media makes it easier.
Everything you hear on News 88.7 is powered by you, not advertisers. 80% of our funding comes from our Houston community.
That's what makes public media different. It's community funded and always here for you when you need it.
Join that community now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Specs. 63 years of large selection. Now that's worth toasting to. Offering anniversary selections all month long. Details at specsonline.com. The fun starts here. Support comes from Elmore, communicating with clarity and inspiration, collaborating with executive leadership to create expert internal and external communication strategy. Elmore, listen, clarify, communicate. More at elmorepr.com. Support comes from John Moore, helping with plumbing, electrical, and air conditioning repairs, including out-of-warranty units since 1965. Details at 730-2525 or at johnmooreservices.com. Support comes from electricityplans.com, helping Houstonians find electricity plans based on home energy usage with tools to compare rates. Enrollment details and more at electricityplans.com. Support comes from Children's Museum of Houston, presenting Faithful Friends, an exhibit fostering connection, curiosity, understanding, and friendship. Families explore other cultures through the eyes of Houston kids. More at cmhouston.org. Support comes from the Houston Zoo, presenting its annual Feast with the Beasts. Cuisine from a number of Houston's diverse eateries, animal experiences, live music, and more. May 2nd. More at houstonzoo.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To share your thoughts on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Welcome back.
Welcome. And this is something I'm very excited for.
Oh, I know. You love Broadway. I love Broadway, too.
Well, even more than Broadway, I love Forbidden Broadway. I became obsessed with their cast albums back in, I guess it was the late 80s, early 90s when they started putting out the CDs, and I had to collect them all, and they made me... Well, let me explain what's going on. So Forbidden Broadway has been a theatrical institution that's been parroting Broadway musicals and their stars. It was started in 1982, created by Gerald Alessandri. His newest edition, Forbidden Broadway, Merrily We Stole a Song, continues this tradition by including comic looks at Eddie Redmayne in Cabaret, Audra McDonald in Gypsy, and the show 6, Back to the Future, and so much more. The show is playing this weekend at the Hobby Center. To tell us more, I'm thrilled to have cast member Jenny Lee Stern joining us in the Hello Houston studios.
Welcome, Jenny.
If you're not watching on YouTube, you missed her little pose for us. Very theatrical.
Yeah, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
I think you need a little closer to your mic, and there we go.
Yeah.
So,
Hi.
is it an ensemble cast, or do you have a specific role, or do you have lots of roles?
Oh my gosh, honey, do
Like
I have lots of
90
roles? So there's 4 of us. I mean, I should have ran the numbers before I came here, but I probably play upwards of 12 to 14 characters in, the 90-minute show,
That's
2-hour show.
fun.
And ranging from a 12-year-old boy to a 76-year-old diva, and everything in between, honey. So, Yeah.
So for folks who don't know the show, it is, as we mentioned, it's a parody, but it's not just a parody. You folks do amazing impressions of the people you're doing. Now, they may not be textbook impressions, but you capture the essence of these stars. And it is amazing how quickly you change between them and how spot on they are.
Well, that's wild. I mean, we always say they should do some sort of documentary about, what goes on behind, like the forbidden side of Forbidden Broadway, where someone, there's 3 people on stage and one person's off changing, or 2 people on stage. You're never sitting down and having a little break.
How do you keep straight who you're doing?
That's a great question, because actually our order changes. I mean, just right now we're trying to sort of rearrange a show a little bit and make it just perfect for Houston. We want to make sure it's really curated to each city we go to. And we just came from New York, so it's, just different jokes land different, So, but what happens is when you change, you can't just change the order like you're doing a set list in a rock show, because when that changes, then it's like, oh, well, we need Jenny Lee for the next number, and she's changing into her Annie wig, or she's Angela Lansbury, or wait, she's, whatever.
Just so they know, run some of the characters that you do. I know, of course, Judy Garland, because you can find you doing that all over the internet, which is amazing.
Thank you so much. Well, Judy is something I definitely do. Patsy Cline is something I do a lot, but in this particular version of Forbidden Broadway, you'll see me do Bernadette Peters, Angela Lansbury, Patti LuPone. Without any major spoilers, I might be perhaps allegedly playing Stephen Sondheim at some point. And then we have your send-ups of, Into the Woods. We sort of peppered it with some of the old stuff that people know and love.
Mm-hmm.
So,
who would you say is the most challenging character that you're playing?
So I think it's always challenging. It's always challenging when you're playing someone that's so well known, and people have such an idea in their heads of what they sound like. You know what I mean? And you're trying to really stay in the moment without listening to yourself, being like, "Oh my God, am I a fraud? Do they think I really sound like Patti LuPone?" Or am I like, because it starts to morph into what, just after a while. And so I really do try to keep sharp and, go back and listen.
Is there any understudy? You said there are 4 of you. So, and it's very important that you're all healthy and working and on stage.
That's true.
What happens if somebody gets a cold?
So when we're in a longer run, in New York, when we sit down, yes, we have a male cover and a female cover that can usually cover both tracks depending on, the version of the show that we're doing. We're up here just raw dogging it for Houston, guys. Right? I mean, somebody goes down, I'm gonna have to wear remember that show where the guy did the lip syncing?
It
was one side, this side.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to just throw on something over something.
You talk about impersonating or inhabiting these characters, however you want to classify it. And I guess on somewhat, and please correct me if I'm being way too stereotypic about this, you're going after Broadway legends.
Correct.
And it seems oftentimes those that hit the top of Broadway have a quirk to them that makes them stand out, unlike just people.
Yes.
And so if you can find those quirks of Bernadette Peters or a Patti LuPone, there's certain things.
That's what gives somebody star quality, right?
Right.
I mean, there's a million people in New York, even now and before, that sound the same and look the same and people are stars for a reason, right? They stand up. And it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? Yeah. I mean, I think it's because they've been parodied so much, not just in Forbidden Broadway, but, just go on TikTok. They're all over the place. Yes, they all definitely certainly have a quirk. And it's been amazing for me because I've done the show off and on for 13 years. And so, maybe in Forbidden Broadway, Alive and Kicking, when I did Bernadette in Follies, she was a little different than she is now, 13 years later in Old Friends, right? Her voice has aged a little bit. We're telling a sort of a different angle of the joke. And same with Patti. I mean, Patti, I'm not going to sing Patti like she sang Fontaine. I'm going to sing Patti.
Well, she's not going to sing it like that anymore either.
And, and we weave in inside jokes and we weave in little things that might have happened. I mean, when we were in New York, if something would hit the socials of something, somebody got a video of something. Oh, we're going to put that in
right away.
Yeah.
I want to remind everyone we're talking with Jenny Lee Stern, who is here in town in Forbidden Broadway, happening over at the Hobby Center. We'd love to hear if you've got questions or comments or just want to chat with her. Give us a call, 713-440-8870. Okay, I'm taking you way back.
Okay.
I was fascinated to learn that initially you went up to audition for Forbidden Broadway as just an actress going to an audition, not realizing what it was you were going in for.
So that I was 19 years old, and it was sort of, this was a real heyday for me. This was a time when I was going to 6 or 7 auditions a week. Things have kind of slowed down, COVID and everything. Yeah. And so I, had my little outfit that I wore and my little book and pretty much sang the same 3 songs, and which everyone kind of did.
Yeah, if you're good at one, you're good at one.
And right? I remember going into the basement of Ellen's Stardust Diner, which is in New York, the diner where the waitresses and waiters sing, right? But that's where Forbidden Broadway was being done at that time. And yeah, I didn't really get the grasp of what this audition was, and I went in and I sang my song, and then they started asking me for impressions, and I was like, what? And again, I was really my family was really into old movie musicals and comedy movie. We're more like a comedy family than I would say a Broadway family.
Yeah.
But because I could sing and dance, it all kinds of comes together.
So do they look for impressions, or are they looking for performers that they can teach to do these roles?
Well, obviously I was very green, right? I was 19 years old. So they said, can you do Bernadette Peters? And this is when Bernadette was doing Annie Get Your Gun. And I didn't even know she was doing Annie Get Your Gun. I knew her from, obviously, Annie, the movie with Carol Burnett.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I knew her from The Jerk. And so they were like, Steve Martin. And, they said, can you do Bernadette Peters? And I was like, have you seen a little boy with a T-shirt that says bullshit on it? That's her line from The Jerk. David, where are you going? And they must have been staring at me like, no, honey, song and dance, follies, hell, would someone help this girl? So I think that they knew maybe I wasn't quite ready. And then, gee whiz, I would say, maybe 8 years later or something, it all came back around again. And
you knew how to audition.
Yeah.
And I know you're going to hate this question, or at least I would. Can you do a couple voices for us? You
I was just
Bernadette.
Say,
I know people want to hear
I know,
some.
it's so hard because I'm so, this is what I was telling people, I don't consider myself an impressionist.
Right.
I don't consider myself even a singer. I just consider...
Hold on. You are, if my research is correct, not just though, you are a triple threat, according to Harry Connick Jr.
Well, thank you.
Because you were on his show, on his triple threat competition, and you went on and sang and danced and contorted.
Yes, I did.
Because you're a contortionist, too.
Well, sure.
Sure.
Honey, what do you need? What do you need? Right. So, a lot of roles I play are comedic and brassy and loud and this and that and sing. And a lot of the roles I play are soft and quiet mom who has a sick child in a play, And so I don't consider myself an impressionist. I feel really confident in the show, what I'm doing, because that's what's called upon me for the role, right? And then, of course, I will impersonate everyone we see on the street. We'll be walking through downtown and I'll just keep picking things up. But yes, right, Bernadette Peters, right? And she's just such a hoot and such a fun bit in the show. And then Patti LuPone, she comes on. And there was an original line written, something about...
Is it clean?
Yeah,
okay. Just making sure.
So I had actually run into Patti LuPone at 54 Below. I was doing the 9:30 show and she was doing the 7 o'clock show, and I had no idea. I should probably get an assistant or something who gives me information about what an audition is for or who's going to be in the green room. And so I came out of my dressing room and it's Patti LuPone.
Wow.
And I pulled myself together, went back in. I put 3 more pairs of eyelashes on and just some earrings. And I was like, hi, I'm Jenny Lee Stern. And she goes, I'm Patti LuPone. And I said, I know. And I said, I just wanted to say hello. And, I do you in Forbidden Broadway. I've been doing you for, 13 years or whatever. And she goes, Forbidden Broadway. They're still doing Forbidden Broadway? And I was like, yeah. Like, I didn't know if it was like a compliment or like that old, hacky show, whatever. And anyway, she was super nice and gave us pictures. So we actually changed a line in the show to be that exact line that she said. Like, they're still doing Forbidden Broadway.
Still doing Broadway?
Yeah, exactly. So she's a hoot. And then, I mean, you're going to have to come see the show because some of the impressions I do are very niche.
Good point that you bring up that word, because I think there's some audience members listening right now who are going to think, I don't know that much about Broadway. Would I enjoy the show?
Okay, well, that's the great thing about Forbidden Broadway. If you are the, dramaturg, I love Broadway, I know every fact about Broadway, every inside baseball, you're gonna get every little wink and shoulder pop or whatever. If you are just a musical theater fan, but maybe haven't seen these particular new music, maybe you didn't see the revival of Merrily, maybe you didn't, but you love Wicked and Jersey Boys and, those classics, you're going to get that. If you're a person who just likes to laugh, I mean, you're going to be able to drag your brother-in-law Greg to the show, and he's going to sit down, and he might not know what he's laughing at, but he's going to be laughing. Do you know what I mean? Because it's singing and dancing and funny faces, and it's just, it's good old-fashioned comedy.
I'll just say the part
comedy.
that bugs me the most is that you said Wicked and Jersey Boys or classics like that. I still think of those as the new shows.
I know. But Gerard would
Lord,
probably slap me for saying that. Like Sweeney Todd.
Yeah.
Like
When and where?
It's happening at the Hobby Center tomorrow night through Saturday.
Yes. Jenny Lee Stern is a Forbidden Broadway cast member. Jenny, thank you so much for being on Hello Houston.
Thank you.
And that brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for listening to Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. This is News 88.7.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support comes from Novotny & Company, offering commercial and residential